Shabbat Shalom, everyone. This week is Parashah number 6, Tol'Dot, meaning history, and it starts in Genesis chapter 25, verse 19. Here is the history of Yitzhak, Abraham's son. Abraham fathered Yitzhak. Yitzhak was 40 years old when he took Rivkah, the daughter of Bethuel the Aramee from Padan Aram, and sister of Lavan the Aramee, to be his wife. Yitzhak prayed to Adonai on behalf of his wife because she was childless. Adonai heeded his prayer, and Rivkah became pregnant. The children fought with each other inside her so much that she said, "If it's going to be like this, why go on living?" So she went to inquire of Adonai, who answered her, "There are two nations in your womb. From birth they will be two rival peoples. One of these peoples will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger." When the time for her delivery came, there was twins in her womb. The first to come out was reddish and covered all over with hair like a coat, so they named him Esav. Then his brother emerged with his hand holding Esav's heel, so he was called Yaakov. Yitzhak was 60 years old when she bore them. The boys grew, and Esav became a skillful hunter, an outdoorsman, while Yaakov was a quiet man who stayed in the tents. Yitzhak favored Esav because he had a taste for game. Rivkah favored Yaakov. One day when Yaakov had cooked some stew, Esav came in from the open country exhausted and said to Yaakov, "Please, let me gulp down some of that red stuff. That red stuff, I'm exhausted." Yaakov answered, "First, sell me your rights as the firstborn." "Look, I'm about to die," said Esav. "What use to me are my rights as the firstborn?" Yaakov said, "First, swear to me." So he swore to him, thus selling his birthright to Yaakov. Then Yaakov gave him bread and lentil stew. He ate and drank, got up, and went on his way. Thus Esav showed how little he valued his birthright. A famine came over the land, not the same as the first famine which had taken place when Abraham was alive. Yitzhak went to Gerar to Avimelech, king of the Philistine. Adonai appeared to him and said, "Don't go down into Egypt, but live where I tell you. Stay in this land, and I will be with you and bless you, because I will give you all these lands to you and to your descendants. I will fulfill the oath which I swore to Abraham your father. I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky. I will give all these lands to your descendants, and by your descendants all the nations of the earth will bless themselves. All this is because Abraham heeded what I said and did what I told him to do. He followed my mitzvot, my regulations, and my teachings." So Yitzhak settled in Gerar. The men of the place asked him about his wife, and out of fear he said, "She is my sister." He thought, "If I tell them she's my wife, they might kill me in order to take Rivkah. After all, she is a beautiful woman." But one day, after he had lived there a long time, Avimelech, king of the Philistine, happened to be looking out of a window when he spotted Yitzhak caressing Rivkah, his wife. Avimelech summoned Yitzhak and said, "So she is your wife after all? How come you said, 'She is my sister'?" Yitzhak responded, "Because I thought I could get killed because of her." Avimelech said, "What is this you have done to us? One of the people could have easily have slept with your wife, and you would have brought guilt upon us." Then Avimelech warned all the people, "Whoever touches this man or his wife will certainly be put to death." Yitzhak planted crops in that land and reaped that year 100 times as much as he had sowed. Adonai had blessed him. The man became rich and prospered more and more until he had become very wealthy indeed. He had flocks, cattle, and a large household, and the Philistine envied him. Now the Philistine had stopped up and filled with dirt all the wells his father's servants had dug during the lifetime of Abraham his father. Avimelech said to Yitzhak, "You must go away from us, because you have become much more powerful than we are." So Yitzhak left, set up camp in the Vadi Gerar, and lived there. Yitzhak reopened the wells which had been dug during the lifetime of Avraham his father, the ones the Philistine had stopped up after Avraham died, and called them by the names his father had used for them. Yitzhak's servants dug in the Vadi and uncovered a spring of running water. But the herdsmen of Gerar quarreled with Yitzhak's herdsmen, claiming, "That water is ours." So he called the well Esek, because they quarreled with him. They dug another well, and they quarreled over that one too. So he called it Sitnah. He went away from there and dug another well, and over that one they didn't quarrel. So he called it Rehovot, and said, "Because now Adonai has made room for us, and we will be productive in the land." From there Yitzhak went up to Beersheba. Adonai appeared to him that same night and said, "I am the God of Avraham your father. Don't be afraid, because I am with you. I will bless you and increase your descendants for the sake of my servant Avraham." There he built an altar and called on the name of Adonai. He pitched his tent there, and Yitzhak's servants dug a well. Then Avimelech went to him from Gerar with his friend Achuzat and Pichol, the commander of his army. Yitzhak said to them, "Why have you come to me, even though you were unfriendly to me and sent me away?" They answered, "We saw very clearly that Adonai has been with you, so we said, 'Let there be an oath between us. Let's make a pact between ourselves and you that you will not harm us, just as we have not caused you offense, but have done you nothing but good, and sent you on your way in peace. Now you are blessed by Adonai.'" Yitzhak prepared a banquet for them, and they ate and drank. The next morning they got up early and swore to each other. Then Yitzhak sent them on their way, and they left him peacefully. That very day Yitzhak's servants came and told him about the well they had dug. "We found water." So they called it Shiva. And for this reason, the name of the city is Beersheba to this day. When Esau was 40 years old, he took as wives Yehudit, the daughter of Beeri the Hittite, and Basmat, the daughter of Elon the Hittite. But they became a cause for embitterment of the spirit to Yitzhak and Rivkah. In the course of time, after Yitzhak had grown old and his eyes dim so that he couldn't see, he called Esau, his older son, and said to him, "My son?" And he answered, "Here I am." "Look, I'm old now. I don't know when I'll die. Therefore, please take your hunting gear, your quiver of arrows, and your bow. Go out into the country and get me some game. Make it tasty, the way I like it, and bring it to me to eat. Then I will bless you before I die." Rivkah was listening when Yitzhak spoke to his son Esav. So when Esav went out to the country to hunt for game and bring it back, she said to her son Yaakov, "Listen, I heard your father telling Esav your brother, 'Bring me game and make it tasty so I can eat it. Then I will give you my blessing in the presence of Adonai before my death.' Now pay attention to me, my son, and do what I tell you. Go to the flock and bring me back 2 choice kids. I will make it tasty for your father the way he likes it, and you will bring it to your father to eat, so that he will give you his blessing before his death." Yaakov answered Rivkah his mother, "Look, Esav is hairy, but I have smooth skin. Suppose my father touches me. He'll know I'm trying to trick him, and I'll bring a curse on myself, not a blessing." But his mother said, "Let your curse be on me. Just listen to me, and go get me the kids." So he went, got them, and brought them to his mother, and his mother prepared them in the tasty way his father loved. Next, Rivkah took Esav, her oldest son's best clothes, which she had with her in the house, and put them on Yaakov, her younger son. And she put the skins of the goats on his hands and on the smooth parts of his neck. Then she gave the tasty food and the bread she had prepared to her son Yaakov. He went to his father and said, "My father?" He replied, "Here I am. Who are you, my son?" Yaakov said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I've done what you asked me to do. Get up now, sit down, eat the game, and then give me your blessing." Yitzhak said to his son, "How did you find it so quickly, my son?" He answered, "Adonai your God made it happen that way." Yitzhak said to Yaakov, "Come here, close to me, so I can touch you, my son, and know whether you are in fact my son Esau or not." Yaakov approached Yitzhak his father, who touched him and said, "The voice is Yaakov's voice, but the hands are Esau's hands." However, he didn't detect him because his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's hands. So he gave him his blessing. He asked, "Are you really my son Esau?" And he replied, "I am." He said, "Bring it here to me, and I will eat my son's game so that I can give you my blessing." So he brought it up to him, and he ate. He also brought him wine, and he drank. Then his father Yitzhak said to him, "Come close now and kiss me, my son." He approached him and kissed him. Yitzhak smelled his clothes and blessed Yaakov with these words, "See, my son smells like a field which Adonai has blessed. So may God give you dew from heaven, the richness of the earth, and grain and wine in abundance. May people serve you and nations bow down to you. May you be Lord over your kinsmen. Let your mother's descendants bow down to you. Cursed be anyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you." But as soon as Yitzhak had finished giving his blessing to Yaakov, when Yaakov had barely left his father's presence, Esau his brother came in from his hunting. He too had prepared a tasty meal and brought it to his father. And now he said to his father, "Let my father get up and eat from his son's game, so that you may give me your blessing." Yitzhak his father said to him, "Who are you?" And he answered, "I am your son, your firstborn Esau." Yitzhak began trembling uncontrollably and said, "Then who was it that took game and brought it to me? I ate it all just before you came and gave my blessing to him. That's the truth, and the blessing must stand." When Esau heard his father's words, he burst into loud, bitter sobbing. "Father, bless me too," he begged. He replied, "Your brother came deceitfully and took away your blessing." Esau said, "His name Yaakov really suits him, because he has supplanted me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and here, now he has taken away my blessing." Then he asked, "Haven't you saved a blessing for me?" Yitzhak answered Esau, "Look, I have made him your lord. I have given him all his kinsmen as servants, and I have given him grain and wine to sustain him. What else is there that I can do for you, my son?" Esau said to his father, "Have you only one blessing, my father? Father, bless me too." Esau wept aloud, and Yitzhak his father answered him, "Here, your home will be of the richness of the earth and of the dew of heaven from above. You will live by your sword, and you will serve your brother. But when you break loose, you will shake his yoke off your neck." Esau hated his brother because of the blessing his father had given him. Esau said to himself, "The time for mourning my father will soon come. Then I will kill my brother Yaakov." But the words of Esau, her older son, were told to Rivkah. She sent for Yaakov, her younger son, and said to him, "Here, your brother Esau is comforting himself over you by planning to kill you. Therefore, my son, listen to me. Get up and escape to Lavan, my brother, in Haran. Stay with him a little while until your brother's anger subsides. Your brother's anger will turn away from you, and he will forget what you did to him. Then I'll send and bring you back from there. Why should I lose both of you on the same day?" Rivkah said to Yitzhak, "I'm sick to death of Hittite women. If Yaakov marries one of the Hittite women like those who live here, my life won't be worth living." So Yitzhak called Yaakov, and after blessing him, charged him, "You are not to choose a wife from the Hittite women. Go now to the home of Bethuel, your mother's father, and choose a wife there from the daughters of Lavan, your mother's brother. May El Shaddai bless you, make you fruitful, and increase your descendants until they become a whole assembly of peoples. And may he give you the blessing which he gave Abraham, you and your descendants with you, so that you will possess the land. You will travel through the land God gave to Abraham." So Yitzhak sent Yaakov away, and he went to Padan Aram, to Lavan, son of Bethuel the Arami, the brother of Rivkah, Yaakov, and Esau's mother. Now Esau saw that Yitzhak had blessed Yaakov and sent him away to Padan Aram to choose a wife from there, and that he blessed him, and he charged him, "You are not to choose a Canaanite woman as your wife." And that Yaakov had listened to his father and mother and had gone to Padan Aram. Esau also saw that the Canaanite women did not please Yitzhak his father. So Esau went to Ishmael and took, in addition to the wives he already had, Malachat, the daughter of Ishmael, Abraham's son, the sister of Neviot, to be his wife. Amen.
What we see happening in Israel today, the war between Israel and the Palestinians of Gaza, it had its beginning in the historical record given us in today's Torah portion. Rivka, wife of Isaac, is worried. The natural movement of infants in her womb seems to be abnormally turbulent. We don't know if these twins represented her first pregnancy, but she had witnessed scores of pregnancy. She assisted in not just a few births, because that's just what women did. So she recognized when something wasn't right, and she prayed. She asked God, why these babies seem to be so restless, so agitated all the time, at least partly because it was uncomfortable for her. And God gives her his answer. There are founders of two different nations living within her. And what she is feeling is a struggle for dominance. He also tells Rebekah that the first one out of the birth canal shall not be given the rights and honor as the firstborn, in Hebrew, the Bechor, as was customary. Instead, it was going to be the second one to emerge. Now, to be clear, firstborn, well, that's a title. It's a status that is bestowed upon a son. It doesn't necessarily mean numerical order of birth, although more often than not, the first son to be born was at a later date anointed with the firstborn status. This is a theme that is ongoing in the Bible, a theme that separates what seems to be the reality from a physical earthly sense from what actually is from a spiritual heavenly point of view. Now, going back one generation, from a physical sense, it seemed to Abraham that Ishmael, the son of his concubine Hagar, well, that was his firstborn son, the son that would carry on the promise of the covenant that Abraham had made with God. Because not only was Ishmael born many years before Isaac, but also Abraham was well pleased with Ishmael. Apparently had already decided to bestow that firstborn status upon him. But from the heavenly viewpoint, well, it was Isaac. It was Isaac who would be born later and miraculously by Sarah. That it was going to be he to have the firstborn status and title given to him. Therefore, Isaac would automatically become the all-important carrier of the covenant that God had made with Abraham on to the next generation. Now, as concerns Isaac and Rivka, she is told the older will serve the younger. In other words, the physical firstborn will not receive the usual and customary rights of the Bechor, the firstborn. Instead, it's going to go to the secondborn. Now, the far-reaching and even eternal importance of this matter is that the physical firstborn, which is Esau, is not going to be the inheritor of the covenant. Instead, the physical second-born, Jacob, Yaakov. He is going to be that inheritor. Jacob is to be the Bekor, or on a spiritual level as well as on earthly level. He is the firstborn, but that's based on the divine will, on the divine declaration, as opposed to human tradition, by which Isaac would typically have, and apparently had already determined, he was going to give that title to Esau. Now, notice this interesting parallel. The physical firstborn of Isaac, Esau, is like Ishmael, the physical firstborn of Abraham. But the spiritual firstborn of Isaac, who would be Jacob, is parallel to Isaac, the physical firstborn, the spiritual firstborn of Abraham. So we have here this ongoing principle and pattern of the reality of duality. Everything has a spiritual reality that plays out, or it's determined in the heavenly realm, while the physical reality of that same thing, or that same determination, plays out in the earthly realm. Now, the spiritual realm and the earthly realm are far more connected than it seems by any means that we can even perceive or detect it. And as a matter of fact, as we will get into on our next Shabbat lesson, that is demonstrated to Jacob, all right, when he sees a stairway between heaven and earth and angels going up and down. There's that connection. And as concerns Rivka's pregnancy, this much is certain. The founders of these two separate nations, one being Jacob, the other one Esau, will always have perpetual enmity for one another. And one will have perpetual dominance over the other. This is part of the meaning of the phrase, the older shall serve the younger. Now the twins are born, and the first one to be born is Esau. He was red. He was ruddy in complexion and had an unusual amount of hair. Here's where some knowledge of Hebrew comes in handy. The Hebrew word for hairy, as it's used here, is se'ar. Se'ar. Now, if that word rings a bell for you, it should, because we're going to find out later in Genesis that Esau moved away from Jacob and he established his nation, his own nation, in a region that would become known as Mount Seir. This is a play on words. See, Mount Seir got its name from Esau being born very Seir, hairy. So Mount Seir, named for a characteristic of Esau, literally means hairy mountain or Mount Hairy. Now we're also told that during that birth process, Jacob was holding on to Esau's heel. Now the idea is usually explained as Jacob trying to keep Esau from being born first. Well, if that's actually the case, then it highlights how even from the womb, the human will is not in tune with God's will. Jacob had been elected by God as the firstborn, the inheritor of the covenant. But the physical, tangible sign of which God had elected, it would be the one to come out second. And we should reasonably assume that Rebekah would not have kept this information that Jehovah gave to her about the separate destinies of her twin sons to herself. I mean, that would have been disloyal, but very disrespectful to her husband, Isaac. Rather, she would have told him right away of what God informed her That is, despite all Middle Eastern tradition that whichever of the twins came out first was to be declared Bekor, firstborn, it would be the second. I mean, after all, there was little more important to a family of that era than who would succeed the father in authority over the clan, who would receive that firstborn status. Now, it's also hard to imagine that Rebekah would have withheld from her twin sons, Esau and Jacob, that God's determination was that Jacob, not Esau, would be the Bekor. You see, I mean, how cruel it would have been to have waited until their maturity to inform them of this all-important decree, a decree that Rivkah and Isaac were aware of before these children were even born. So it is with this understanding of the family's awareness of the younger, Jacob being destined to have that birthright above the older, even if it's moments older, Esau. That's how we must view what happens next. Well, as the story now continues to unfold, we find that, as is common within families, parents have their favorites. Isaac preferred Esau. Esau was apparently very manly. He was skillful with a bow as a hunter. I mean, these are things dads typically admire about their sons. Jacob, however, well, he was quieter. He was more sensitive, not particularly interested in doing the things that males typically did, something that made him closer to his mother. Now, notice our parallel once again with Ishmael and Isaac. Ishmael was the favorite of Abraham. Isaac was the favorite of his mother, Sarah. And when Jehovah told Abraham that it was to be the second-born, Isaac, that was to obtain the firstborn position currently held by Ishmael, well, Abraham cried out to God, "Oh, if Ishmael could only be in your presence." Abraham determined he wanted Ishmael to remain with all those firstborn rights and privileges, and likewise Isaac determined he wanted Esau to remain as that, having that firstborn status. So it took some extraordinary action by Rivkah to thwart all that. So as the story progresses, Esau comes in from a hunt. He was famished, and he sees that Jacob has prepared a pot of lentils, or more literally translated, red stew. Now, Jacob, apparently never having been entirely comfortable with having the rights of the firstborn assigned to him, decides he's going to help God. He's going to get Esau to openly renounce the traditional birthright that he was born with. And the impulsive and brash Esau makes a statement in response to Jacob's proposal that begins with, "Well, since I'm about to die," he might as well give up his birthright to Jacob, and he seals that deal with an oath. Now, this "I'm about to die" statement isn't literal. It's just saying something akin to, who cares? Now, of course, since God had long ago settled the issue, in reality, Esau had no birthright to sell, for it already belonged to Jacob. Jacob had no need to resort to deception to obtain this birthright, but because the Lord had already assigned it to him, he went against his will and tried to solve it himself. I mean, the problem was neither Jacob or Esau had the faith to accept it as fact. Now, we're also given here a small piece of information we will find useful in the chapters ahead. Esau's given a nickname. Pay close attention. He's given a nickname. It's Edom, which is meant to refer to Esau's redness, as well as to recall the infamous incident at the stew pot that transpired. Now, Edom, however, is another play on words. Okay? The Hebrew word for red is not Edom, it's Adam. Just like Adam and Eve. However, the two words are spelled the same. Dalet Mem in Hebrew. See, it's only when we add different vowel sounds and then pronounce it out loud that we come up with Edom versus Adam. And more importantly, for future reference, just remember that Edom and Esau are one in the same, in the sense that Esau is the founder of the nation, Edom. And often in the Bible, a nation will also be referred to by the name of its founder. So it goes back and forth. Now, the future nation of Edom, so prevalent from here on in the Bible as an ongoing enemy of Israel, will play a significant role in the end times. As a matter of fact, you're going to find many prophecies against Edom in the end times, especially. Now, finally, in verse 34, we're told that Esau despised his birthright. This is a very serious biblical condemnation of Esau. However, I suspect this is an English translation that just doesn't come across as it was originally intended. I think it's better to understand it in the sense that Esau despised that he was the first one to be born. Because all these reasons we discussed, if he'd only been the second one to be born, he would have been the inheritor of the covenant. He would have been the firstborn. Now, I have little doubt that Rivkah told Esau, as she undoubtedly did Jacob, that despite the chronological order, it was for sure Jacob who was going to get those firstborn rights. Think about this for a minute. What a hurtful thing for Esau. It's not his fault. Knowing that from his point of view, his own mother was telling him that despite the first one to be born, he wouldn't be given the firstborn status. How else could it have felt to Esau than his own mother was siding with Jacob? He probably saw his losing of the firstborn rights as inevitable, grossly unfair. So he behaved as though it didn't even matter to him in the first place. Well, the great sage Rashi said that there's a lesson we can derive from this incident, and it's how a righteous person views life in general versus how a wicked person does the same. Jacob, the righteous one, views life as, what am I here to accomplish? Why did God place me in this position on earth at this time? What are my duties? What are my obligations? What are my goals? The wicked one's view, Esau's view, is eat, drink, and be merry because tomorrow we may die. Get whatever you can and move on. Esau was thinking, after contemplating the recent death of his grandfather, Abraham, that he really didn't want to be tied to all those duties and obligations of the firstborn and family patriarch when his father Isaac died. Jacob chose that very moment to challenge Esau because no one knows another person better than a twin knows another. Jacob knew that Esau was ready to openly acknowledge he was not going to receive that firstborn blessing. Well, fast forward now to the year 2023. The army of Gaza has viciously attacked Israel. Israel's fighting back. The Palestinians there are essentially the descendants of Esau, sometimes in a genealogical sense, sometimes in a spiritual sense, who carry a perpetual enmity towards Israel, towards Jacob. Close to 4,000 years have passed. Think of that. 4,000 years have passed since Jacob and Esau were born. And ever since that time, they've been at each other's throats. And it's going to remain so until Yeshua returns to end the fighting once and for all. So what this says for us today, who stand with Israel, is that whatever victory Israel achieves over Gaza, it's only going to be temporary. The hatred is not going to be stamped out due to the reality that its source is evil, a spiritually based evil. I want to be clear. What the Palestinians are doing against Israel is the same as doing it against God. One side's right. The other side's wrong. Israel's right. And I want to take a few minutes now, as I've done the past couple of Shabbat lessons, to explain some realities about the situation there that seem to go unsaid. The news media has completely obscured the meaning of something very important. We constantly hear of the Palestinians claiming they are fighting what? They are fighting against the occupation. Right? That's what we hear. They're fighting against the occupation. Most of the world's nations agree with them. And very sadly, here in America, we have a substantial faction on one side of the political spectrum, also standing with the Palestinians against Israel, adopting the Palestinians' famous slogan, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." I want to address this. What occupation is the Palestinians referring to? What do the residents of Gaza mean by saying Israel is their occupier? See, the reality is that in 2005, Israel removed all Jewish presence, some of it by force. Oh, I remember it so well. And removed all military presence from Gaza and has never had a presence there since. I'm going to say this again. In no way does Israel occupy even 1 foot of Gaza, nor has it exercised any government, military, or civil authority over Gaza for 18 years, and they're only there now as a result of what happened on October 7th of this year. Now, although the media paints a picture that just muddies the waters, and it makes it seem as though Israel has been occupying Gaza all along, that is not the case. It's an intended deception. It's a deception in order to establish a slanderous lie in the minds of people who just don't care to take the time to find out the truth, which, by the way, is easily done. See, the residents of Gaza fully understand this. Of course, they live there. And you know what? They do not claim that Israel occupied Gaza. No, for them, you see, the occupation means something else entirely. It's referring to the state of Israel as it exists today. That is, the Palestinians say that the Jews have no right to have or to live in a Jewish state, and that the land the state of Israel exists on belongs to the Muslim world. Therefore, the Jews are wrongly occupying it. See that again. By Jews living in the state of Israel, they are occupiers. Get it? From the river, Jordan, to the sea, the Mediterranean. Palestine shall be free. Now, in the Muslim world, they come to this conclusion of occupation because it's a basic doctrine of the Muslim religion that once a Muslim sets foot on a piece of land, it becomes Muslim territory forever. It doesn't matter if other people live there first, even if it had been for 1,000 years. Now, don't think this applies only to Israel. Okay, everywhere in the world that Muslims have migrated to, Islam believes it now belongs to them. And by the way, this includes the United States. It includes the United States because we have hundreds of thousands of Muslims now living here. For them, this non-Muslim Americans are essentially, we're the wrongful occupiers of an Islamic state. This is not a fantasy. So understand, when these college, university students, these street mobs, even members of the United States Congress, march and chant from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. They're talking about genocide. See, it means that they demand that the nation of Israel be attacked, destroyed, wiped off the face of the planet so that the Muslim Palestinians can have that land. Now, knowing this, what are you going to do about it? First, I'm going to tell you what to do. Stand up and show some courage. Speak out whenever and wherever you encounter this lie. Second, if you have a child in a university or any school of any kind where such lies are tolerated, even promoted, and man, we know who they are now, don't we? That means they have an anti-God agenda, and it's being pressed forward. Pull them out. It's not like there's only one college in the United States. This is for their own good. There's lots of excellent schools for them to go to that do not tolerate this. I mean, these universities need a lot of money to survive. When the students disappear, goodbye money. Next, vote out these congressmen and women who say such vile, wicked, outlandish things against Israel. And I want to tell you something. You know why they say it? Because they believe it. Don't support stores and businesses who stand with the Palestinians, because it automatically means they're against Israel. Stop buying there. I mean, ask yourself, do you find it necessary to be even-handed, to send support to the Palestinians, even though maybe you're doing the same thing for Israel? Well, then realize you're standing against God by doing this. There's going to be a huge price to pay for it, folks, whether it's now or in the future. Do you have friends that support the Palestinian cause? Confront them. Inform them. Straighten them out. And if that fails, I'm going to tell you, it's better to lose a friend than to stand before the Lord and explain why you supported his enemies. Thinking something like, everyone has a right to their own opinion. That sounds good in a political democracy, but by no means does that cut it with the Lord. See, times come along in history My dad was alive in such a time, serving in World War II. There's these times that come along where we have to choose, even if it hurts, between good and evil. This is one of those times. It isn't going to revert someday to a more peaceful time, not until Messiah comes again. This is going to be the condition of the world from now until the end. Get used to it. Now, one other matter about today's Torah portion that just plays into this narrative. I want to revisit the first paragraph of Genesis chapter 26. Because there it says, a famine came over the land, not the same as the first famine, which had taken place when Abraham was alive. Isaac went to Gerar, to Avimelech, the king of the Philistines. And Adonai appeared to him and said, do not go down to Egypt. Live where I tell you. Stay in this land. I will be with you. I will bless you because I'm going to give these lands to you, to your descendants. I will fulfill the oath which I swore to Abraham, your father. God said to Isaac, he was going to give him all those lands. Where was Isaac standing? Where was he sojourning at the time God told him this? He was in Gerar. He was in Philistine territory. That is, Isaac was in Philistia. Guess where that is? Modern day Gaza. So, who is it that's actually doing the occupation in our day and time? Who's living on land that doesn't belong to them? A land they're not supposed to be living there. It's the Palestinian people of Gaza that are squatting on land that God gave to Isaac. We just read it. It's not my supposition. Israel has the right, but they haven't the backbone to assert that God-given right. It's cost them mightily. When in 2005, Israel gave away Gaza, they wrongly assumed that by appeasing the demands of the Arab Muslim world, the United Nations, the United States, Europe, and by substituting their own political and religious definitions of justice, mercy, morality, fairness, in place of God's will, that they would finally be at peace with their neighbors. They'd be rewarded for their efforts. How's that turned out? History has shown us just the opposite has occurred. The world has not congratulated them for that. They continue to be condemned, and they are worse off today than before they gave Gaza away. See, this is a lesson we must each learn and apply to our own lives. God's ways are what works, and not our own thoughts and our own decisions that oppose His will. Bow your heads in prayer, please.
For more teaching and information, visit us online today. Come and be a part of our fellowship. Here at The Seed, enjoy worshiping and learning God's Word with us.